Ukrainians in the south sent reconnaissance and sabotage groups behind enemy's lines in Kinburn Spit, while the whole attention of Russians is switched towards the east. And speaking about the east, this whole situation about Bakhmut and Soledar can very well be the very final major battle of Putin, and today I will have 3 scenarios for you how this can happen. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And our first picture comes to us from Kharkov, where the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, Annalena Baerbock, visited the city. She's the very first government official of Germany who has visited Kharkov since the beginning of this war, and during her tour she has been shown the destroyed infrastructure and civilian buildings. And as a result of this visit, she pledged the unconditional support of Germany to Ukraine as well as weapons. Next we go to Shebekino, located in Belgorod region, Russia, where this last night some loud noises were heard inside the settlement. Our next stop brings us to Rostov region, also Russia, where local residents were able to find the missile booster lying in the field. Even the civilians themselves were able to identify this as a missile booster, but the local authorities of the region took this part for an inspection, which basically looks like they will try to make it look like that this was an actual missile from Ukraine. But let's wait and see. And speaking about the missiles, Russia recently reduced the intensity of its artillery strikes by 75%. And among the possible reasons are the inventories shortages, the overestimation of Ukraine tactic, and the increased support to Ukraine by the Western countries. And whatever the real reason is, the most important part is that the number of massive attacks against Ukraine has decreased, which basically means, best case scenario, Ukraine might take advantage of this silence, and they might do a counteroffensive in the near future. And in case there are any major news happening soon, I will always be here to report them for you. And if you don't want to miss any of these updates as soon as they start happening, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram and force me to post some stories to see how I live outside of YouTube and this yellow jacket. But okay, in several seconds we'll talk about these reconnaissance and sabotage groups that Ukrainians are sending behind enemy's lines. But first of all, let me give you an extremely quick update from the south. And first of all, according to the Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Marat Husnulin, the very first section of the left side of Crimean Bridge has been installed. Next we refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that Russians continue to reinforce their defensive positions on the left side of Dnipro River. And at the same time, the same defensive fortifications are being installed in the Zaporozhye region, and Russians are also bringing their military equipment and vehicles to this region from all over Ukraine, including from Kherson region. Next we have a statement from the Ukrainian sources that they were able to destroy a Russian reconnaissance boat on Dnipro River. And ultimately, several separate Ukrainian military units are being deployed on Kinburn Spit to perform sabotage and reconnaissance missions. One of the best parts about this is that Ukraine is doing this while the whole attention of Russia is switched towards the east, specifically obviously Bakhmut and Soledar. Which means that in case Ukrainians are successful at gaining the foothold in this area, this might potentially be the place in the future where the rest of Ukrainian forces will be crossing Dnipro River for their ultimate and final liberation of the rest of Kherson region. But you know what? Ukraine also have some partisan units operating in the east, so let's talk about this region right now. And first of all, once again, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continue their offensive operations along Svatove-Kremin Road to regain the lost positions. At the same time, reportedly, Ukrainian partisans are targeting the critical ground lines of communication, more commonly known as the logistics of Russians in Luhansk region. And it is pretty much exactly what Ukraine is doing right now in the south, which is attacking the enemy while it's not watching. And not just attacking anywhere, but attacking in the rear of Luhansk region. Then we also have some reports from the Ukrainian sources which claim that there was some loud noises in Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. And then right here is the intercepted phone call between two Russian soldiers who are talking about that there was 610 Russian soldiers lost in this recent attack in Makiivka.
Говорит, 610 в Макеевке погибших. Говорит, 12 КАМАЗов, говорит, я вывез.
Я же тебе сказал. Это не 63.
А почему тогда, власти-то это все замалчивают?
Да потому что, чтобы бунт не подняли.
The whole conversation goes on for around 2 minutes, and if you want to hear the full version, see the uncensored footage and support the channel due to still ongoing demonetization, the links will be down below. And the most intense fighting in the east at this very moment is obviously happening around Bakhmut and Soledar. Speaking about Bakhmut, the main directions of Russians' attacks recently have been coming from the northeast and the south. Russians also reportedly tried to advance closer to Klishchinivka, but Ukrainians were able to repel this attack. And right here we have one of the most recent images of Bakhmut, and as you can see, pretty much the entire city has been completely destroyed to the ground. And I don't know about you, but this most certainly does not look like liberation to me, or whatever Russians claim they do in this city. And now let's talk about Soledar, where recently, reportedly, Russians took the control over the main supply road that leads inside this city. And as of recently, the most intense fighting inside Soledar was around the salt mine. There were even some claims that Ukrainian soldiers started retreating from Soledar in order to avoid being encircled, but later this information has been proven wrong by Yevgeny Prigozhin. And he said that according to his information, for better or worse, Ukrainians are bravely defending this city. But pretty much yes, in the last couple of days Ukrainians have been experiencing waves of attacks of Russians, one after another, and this might potentially be the very first major victory of Russia in several months. And by the way, this might also become the last major victory for Putin himself, and we will talk about this in more details very soon. According to some military experts, the reason why Russians want to take Soledar so much, it is because it will open them the direction for future attacks against Bakhmut from the north. And in case Russians are successful in Bakhmut as well, most likely their next direction of their attacks will be against Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. But most importantly, or at least according to Russians, is that this potential victory in Soledar and Bakhmut will be this long-awaited battlefield victory that Russian people haven't heard of in several months. And I mean, it's kinda obvious that most likely this is the case. That is why Russians want to capture these cities so much, and they're using any means possible, such as using the World War I tactics: send as many people as possible and do it no matter what it takes. And in the 21st century, it is pretty hard to fight against these barbaric military tactics that pretty much not a single country still uses. And so yeah, right here we have also the satellite image of Soledar, which shows the current condition of this city. And according to Zelensky, this is exactly what the madness looks like, because in the past, Soledar was a peaceful, quiet town with approximately 10,000 people, and now it's completely in ruins. Russia doesn't even need it that much. They cannot take it with military purposes, with the regular military tactics. That is why they decided to completely destroy it. And yes, once again, Russians will most likely call it the liberated Soledar. And so yeah, later on that day, we started to receive the reports that Russians are now fully controlling both Bakhmut and Soledar, but neither of these claims have been yet fully confirmed. But right here, for example, we have a video from Wagner soldiers who are allegedly saying that they took the control over Soledar's city center. And then ultimately, according to the Russian infiltrator in Donetsk, Denis Pushilin, after capturing Soledar, Russians might go towards Bakhmut and Seversk, which is just yet another probable case scenario what can happen in the near future. But you know what? So I've been thinking and I realized, and by the way, everything that I'm going to say right now will be just my own assumptions, so I realized that this Bakhmut-Soledar situation, in fact, might become the very final major battles for Putin. Or I mean, at least it definitely feels this way. And here's why. After Bakhmut-Soledar, Russia might want to quietly end this war, because this will be this symbolic victory which the government of Russia was looking forward so much. Unless, they start to feel extremely motivated and that like everything else is possible, so that they decide to continue their invasion in Ukraine. In this case, if you remember from my previous videos, Russia might even do something as unexplainable as invading Ukraine also from the north, from the territory of Belarus. Or at least they will show the serious intentions to do this in order to scare the West and Ukraine. But you know what, just like I was already mentioning, I personally do not think that this invasion from the north will happen, and recently this assumption was also confirmed by Pentagon. Another thing that might happen is that Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of Wagner, who is feeling extremely empowered right now, he might challenge Putin for his rule, or at least a part of it. Right now, with everything that's happening around Soledar and Bakhmut, Prigozhin makes everything possible to get as much publicity about the success of Wagner as possible. And after this potential victory both in Bakhmut and in Soledar, Prigozhin might have even more leverage on Putin. He will basically say like, give me more power or I will pull out Wagner forces from Ukraine. And in his own words, the way Prigozhin was promoting his Wagner around the media is that he was saying that it was Wagner alone responsible for the success in Soledar. So it's not like that he says in your face the army of Russia. By doing such statements, he also gains the popularity among Russian Z patriots. And so, pretty much, yes, the three potential scenarios that we might have after potential success of Russia, both in Bakhmut and in Soledar, are the following. First of all, after claiming the success in Bakhmut and Soledar, Russia might at least show the intentions that they are about to invade from the north, and with this idea they'll be blackmailing the Western leaders, so that it is them who'll be forcing Zelensky to talk with Russia. To be honest, however unfortunate it sounds, this will be the best case scenario for Putin, because first of all, he will be able to present this long-awaited victory to his people and at the same time quietly end this war on his terms. As long as, Ukraine agrees to these conditions. The second scenario is that Russia continues with its invasion as it is, starts try to advance deeper into the east, and most likely these Soledar and Bakhmut will be their final major victories. Because come on, Russia spent so much time, so many lives trying to advance in this city, and now Ukraine, who is learning from their own mistakes, will most certainly not allow anything like this to ever happen again. And so the third scenario is that Prigozhin, who is feeling the influence and power over the weakened Putin, he will decide to compete for the rule over Russia by blackmailing Putin, then Prigozhin will pull out Wagner forces from Ukraine. In case this happens, Russia will most likely lose very quick, and it will be the people of Russia who will start despising their president. And in case Putin agrees to Prigozhin terms and decides to share the power, the influence of Prigozhin will only keep growing. And as you can see, pretty much yes, this Soledar-Bakhmut situation does feel like the last major victory for Putin. And the main question is, which decision will he take, and what will be the reaction of the international community? And if you don't want to miss any of these historic events as soon as they start happening, just please once again subscribe to my channel, it only takes one click. And if you want to support my work due to still ongoing demonetization, please consider becoming my channel member, use a PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where you receive early access to the uncensored footage. You can find all the other useful links to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.